not being on this team anymore. Mickey Callaway was very forthcoming in that article. He said, we looked at each other and said, hey, if he doesn't kick it into gear this spring, we may release him. He may be a guy that doesn't go forward with us after that. And from that point, he's been, I don't want to say on fire, but it's like that switch was kind of flipped, and they said, man, this isn't the same guy that he was previously. So Mickey Callaway said, what was his quote? He said that was the most proud. What TJ House has become as of today is the most proud he's been of a job of helping develop a guy in his career, which I think says a lot when you look at some of the guys that Callaway's worked with.
Yeah, that's true. And House doesn't have, lights out Clayton Kershaw stuff. But what he's been able to do, as far as I can see, from my vantage point, is he's been able to throw curveballs for strikes to both right-handed and left-handed hitters, and he gets a lot of outs, without throwing a lot of pitches. And the Twins have just tied it up.
Yeah,
but it's that's the key for him is been able to throw breaking pitches for strikes all the time. It seems like, and he's got a good enough fastball that he's just good enough at spotting it away and in that he's been able to get people out by not throwing a ton of pitches. And the curveball seems to me is his bread and butter.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. It's a numbers game right now. It'll be they'll continue doing this until guys reach up and grab those spots. And as Dan just told you, a couple of hits here in the bottom of the third. The Twins have now tied the game one apiece in the bottom of the third, Indians and Twins. We'll update you on that some more before we go off the air. But Twins aren't going quietly, and we'll see if the Indians can. I noticed, too, Kendrys Morales, I think it's been snapped, but he came into this series on a 10-game hitting streak. I know for the most part, he hadn't been great, but I had some people point that out to me. Just they see the headline hitting streak. I believe overall he hasn't been that great with them since they signed him. But some people, he was out there.
He's hitting 238. So,
yeah, he was actually hitting 200 before he kind of warmed up in the last 10 days or so. So to be honest, he's brought himself up to 238. I had checked in on him right before he had that hitting streak, and he was, because I wanted to check, because I wanted to see. I was a little mad. I was a guy who thought, hey, that's somebody the Indians might want to reach out once the June 1st and the qualifying offer came off the table. But he wasn't doing anything at first for the Twins. I said, well, I guess the Indians were glad that they didn't make that move there. He hasn't hit for any power so far, and he still hasn't. He's got one home run on the season and 25 strikeouts in 151 at-bats. And again, the Indians got people that can hit 238 and strike out 25 times in 39 games. We got a couple guys that can do that. So it was the same thing when, was it Bruce or somebody brought up Soriano to me the other day. I'm like, dude, we've got 221 hitters that strike out 71 times in 67 games. I can name them if you want. I don't see how guys like that help, but I was interested if he was warming up a bit because he did get on that 10-game streak.
Yeah, that's true. And he was a guy that you and I both looked at in the offseason, and even more recently than that, as a guy that could maybe help his team. You'd like to see
his last week he's hitting
a right-handed bat more than a left-handed bat. But.
That's pretty much it. He brought himself up because his last 7 days he's hitting 316. Other than that, he's really about a 200 hitter since they signed him. And some of that's what you get when you sign a guy in the middle of the summer, too. Who knows if he's ready to get out there and stuff. But anyways, we'll see what happens with the Indians here. Another thing I wanted to ask you, just got a message here from the Browns. Are you going out to any of the training camps this weekend?
No plans to do that. No plans to do that.
Too late. If you don't, you're not.
Sold out.
I was going to say, if you have no plans at this point not to go, then you're not going, because that's where I was
don't bother
going.
making any. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the Indians just sent me the email. The first 3 practice sessions, which is the 26th, 27th, and 28th, which is this weekend. What's that, Saturday, Sunday, Monday? They're all sold out. So if you haven't already gotten tickets to the first 3 training camps, then you're not going. So just don't even bother making plans. Family Day as well, sold out. We talked about that the other day in less than 10 hours. There's only 10 remaining sessions to get your tickets. So unlike in years past, if you're used to, and I am too, I get do the media thing, but when I take the kids, it's just kind of a, hey, you feel like going to training camp tomorrow? All right, we'll get up and go to training camp, and no more, not with the way things are going. So if you want to go, in August. Start planning now and get a hold of the Indians, because you cannot just up and go to practice anymore. But yeah, I was going to announce the first three.
I was just going to say the last time I was at a Browns training camp was, I believe it was 85, and I took my 7-year-old son to get Bernie Kosar's autograph, and it was probably the last time that there was this much excitement about Browns training camp was when Bernie had sort of established himself as a quarterback that was good and might be good for a long time to come. It might have been 86, but in any event, my son was only about 7 or 8 years old, and we went out there and waited probably an hour with a bunch of other dads and kids to get Bernie's autograph, and he was very gracious and hung around at least an hour after practice to sign for everybody that wanted a signature. But this level of excitement reminds me very much of that time when the Browns had some success. I think it was after the 85 season when they beat the Jets in double OT, and I think it was prior to the 86 season when Bernie pretty much ruled the town. But this frenzy that's going on right now is very much reminiscent of that.
Yeah, and I think I said it the other day. I think they'll easily smash the club record for training camp, no doubt. Like, I have no doubt in my mind. They'll probably smash the record with half the sessions left to go,
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And they've done a nice job, I think the organization has, of getting ahead of this thing and, selling tickets online and doing that whole program to try to control it in some way. I think 25,000, wasn't that the number where they cut off the availability? And just even trying to deal with that many people in that venue is going to be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. They did. Yeah, 25,000 was the cap for the family day out there at InfoCision Stadium. A lot of demand. Absolutely, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting, man. I mean, people are excited, and I don't know if did you see. We don't need to go into this conversation right now because you and I have had it before. Did you see Bill Livingston's commentary the other day about, and he kept going back to the point that we talk about a lot, about the Indians' attendance struggles compared to the Browns and the Cavs. Last year, I actually underestimated. I thought it was 15. He pointed out that last year, winning 30% of your games, they did, 17,000 fans a game, which is, for those of you that say, yeah, LeBron's going to revitalize the franchise. Yeah, on the court he will, but he's only adding 2,500 tickets a game because they were at 80% capacity with the team that they've been trotting out there. And, of course, we always go back to the Indians and their attendance struggles, and at the last line, and it's all good writers know how to do that, but the last line he gives it with is, with the aberration of the 90s aside, maybe Cleveland just isn't as much of a tribe or a baseball town as people would believe. And sometimes when you see those numbers of look at the Browns, we bring them up a lot, but it's different. But there is some truth to what he said. But it was a good little piece about the attendance and how the Indians, you asked them to spend and they spent some money, and you asked them to compete and they competed, and they are right now still competing. So, and at the same time, they're having trouble getting people out there. And even you look at the game, look at the Twins attendance here, look at the Tigers. I mean, the two teams playing the same over the weekend, and they're drawing 41,000, and that actually trips me out because the financial problems in Detroit, and I'm like, really? And it's not like they don't have the Pistons and the Lions, so it's not like they don't have the other major league franchises as well that cannibalize the entertainment dollar. And they're still putting 41K in there every time, and you even watch the Twins on a weekday draw better crowds than had the game been the other place than it would have drawn had it been here in Cleveland. I mean, it's a circular question because it always comes back around to why, and there is no answer. But there is some truth to that, I think, too, and it'll be pointed out even more by how many people flood out to training camp to see the Browns.
Yeah, well, first of all, on the Cavs, that's one of the great mysteries to me. How in the world they average 17,000 for a 33-win team?
I know.
I think part of it gets down to what Gilbert does and the difference between Gilbert and Guns in terms of the show that they put on for fans at the Q. Entertainment every moment, something going on all the time. they do a really nice job of just making it a true entertainment experience in addition to being an NBA basketball game. So the few times that I've attended, it's very noticeable the difference in what the customer experience is at the Q for a Cavs game under Gilbert than what it was under Gunn, and no comparison. So that's part of it, I think. They just do a good job. As far as, this is the time of year when traditionally, guys like you and me are going to have to keep talking Indians, because after this weekend, it's going to be Brownstown again, and you know it. It's all anybody's going to be talking about. And,
I know.
And I hope that the Indians' attendance doesn't fall off even more, just because the focus of this city is going to be on the Browns, and then soon enough on the Cavs getting ready to play. So I agree with Livingston that maybe this just isn't a baseball town. The old, before the 90s, the conversation was always about it's a sleeping giant. The town's a sleeping giant. If you win, they will come. And the 90s seemed to vindicate that point of view when everything arrived in a perfect storm of a good team and a brand new stadium and 5 years of sellouts.
And the Browns leaving. The Browns leaving.
All the people, and the Browns being gone or
that
terrible,
was huge.
Or both. Yeah. Those people were congratulating themselves for being right. But then as soon as let's say the recession of 2001 kind of hit, and the city itself took a hit, and really it just it faded away. The team became bad again, and the surge in attendance and interest in baseball just didn't last. Let's face it, it didn't last, and it wasn't something that could persist over a decade. It persisted for I guess maybe about a decade, 6 or 8 years, I guess you'd say. 5 years of sellouts, and then a couple of years in decline after that. But that's what happens when you have 30 years of bad baseball and you alienate an entire generation or two of potential fans because you never get them wrapped up in it. Progressive or Jacobs Field in the mid 90s was a happening place to be, but at the same time, it a lot of it was just people going because that's where they could see and be seen, and not that they were baseball fans per se.
Oh yeah, we talk about that. How many of those were not in baseball fans, like you said? That was just the thing to do. You get that a lot with sports, and I think we're going to really be able to physically test the theory in the next 2 years or so as to whether Cleveland can support three teams. And the reason I say that is because of what's going on with the Cavs, for sure, because they have obviously brought in top-level talent here, and they've changed. They're no longer waiting. They're playing for now. The Browns theoretically are on the upswing. I'm going to leave. I mean, obviously, we've got to see how this season shakes out, but there's a lot of excitement. So let's just assume that they are turning things around. They go 500 this year. They're a playoff contender next year. Let's just, let's not go crazy with it. But you've got that. And that'll be this fall. And then this fall and winter and spring, you've got the Cavs definitely on a playoff run. At least that much, if not whatever goes beyond there. So I think you'd be coming off of that. I think if the Indians, especially if they make another run here this year, if they have another postseason run, or at least are there until the last few days of the season, I think that it could be where the whole town kind of floats, rises together. And what I mean by that is the good feeling from the Browns and the Cavs carry over. I'm curious to see if the Indians, especially if they sign somebody in the offseason, nothing huge, but if they have a good progression and they come into next year expected to be a playoff team, I'm curious if the raising of everything else will increase that attendance a little bit, and you get some of the guys that are, just because Cleveland sports is on the upswing, I'm curious if that will rub off next season onto the Indians, assuming that they're still a team expected to contend, and not, man, we hope the Indians contend, but they're one of those teams that people are going, hey, Indians are a contender on ESPN, they're picking the Indians, stuff like that. I think then I think the attendance may pick up a bit because of the other teams, but I think we're going to test that because we'll find out real quick next year. But what do you think? Do you think I'm right? That's just kind of my feeling, that all boats will rise, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's the expression that I was thinking of too. That a rising tide lifts all boats, and then if the town is excited about sports and if there's a general enthusiasm about sports in Cleveland, that'll help the Indians. I've long contended that